We're now in O1 section fundamentals, O1 R mock. This file here, O1 class using class. This is just basically to show us that when we define a class, and we're going to class it, call it mock, we don't need to have object here. It can just be empty like that. We can actually define methods and attributes that actually use the class itself, even in its declaration, because at runtime, once it's compiled, Python will know exactly what mock means. So you can sort of have self-referencing definitions, as it were. We have our class mock here, and we're returning a mock. This is just a simple class to show how we can return mock of a person or return a list of mocks of objects in our class with the same name. So we're just going to create an instance of mock, print it out, loop through in the family. I'm going to hide this temporarily here. So if we come in here, and I'll go into my environment /v sa cls, and if we run this, we can just see we get the list of the family, which we've created 3 instances, Adam, Eve, and John. So we're printing out John and we're printing out the members of the family. If I now put this in, what we're going to do is add an attribute to mock, to the class mock at runtime. And we're going to add the attribute language and the value of Python, and we can print it out here. So if we run this again, we can see we've added a property dynamically at runtime, and our mock property model, the value is Python, and we're using the rich library again. So just an example that we can use a class within the definition of the class, because it will be known once it's been compiled and used at runtime. And it shows us how we can also add attributes, methods, and properties at runtime to a class, part of our mocking procedure. With that being said, we can now go to test O1 double. And what we're doing in here is we're just assuming that we've got a class and it returns some connection to a database. It's just producing a string here. We can create a test double, call it what you want, mock patch, monkey patch, whatever you want to do. And we call it mock prod, and this time it returns something different. And we can run our test here. And what we'll sort of do is when we run the test, we will see that our mock prod gives us this back. So if we come back in here, CLS, and do Python -m pytest -vs, see they all run. And if we come up top here, and in fact I've run all the tests, so let me come back here and do this one more time, and then do the folder that I want is O1 section O1, and I want the test O1. We run that. There we see that has passed. So what we can see in here is that we can create our mock product, create an instance of it, and then just use that. So what we can beginning to see is how mock would work. If this was called mock now, we can replace it. But if we come to test O222, what we may want to do is keep track of how many times that mock has been called. So we're extending the mock prod by actually having a class method that every time it's called, it keeps track of the call count. So when we come down to our test connection, when we do our test, we're doing our test here, but we're also going to see how many times it's been called. The first time it would have been called once. If we run it 5 times, then we can actually find out that it has actually been called 6 times, once here in the first instance, and then 5 other times. So we set our call count here in our mock prod, and all we do is every time we connect to the connection, we increase it by 1. We're using a counter. And if you've used mock before, you've probably come across the mock assert number of times called once, called many times. We can begin to see how that is created just by making our own model. So again, if we come back into the terminal, and this time let's do CLS, and if we do it again, this time if we go and test in our test double 2, we will see that all the tests pass, and let's do this with a VS. So we can see that that is true. And what we've done is on our mock, we've actually started to keep track of more information. So now mock prod is beginning to act a bit like a spy. It's giving a bit of introspection and enabling us to get information about how it's being used. This is one definition of a spy as a mock. So once again, we just every time we call the method, we increase the count, we keep and we can display it at the end. So when we come back down here, mock prod called how many times equals 1 the very first time. But if we do it 5 times, we're going to total it's been called 6 times in this test. So this is our R1 mock. And while we're here, what we can do is the source code for mock is actually here. This is the address of the mock in Python. So if we come in and open up the browser and print it in here, what we'll do is we can see that we get the whole mock. It's about 3,000 lines, including spaces and comments, of all the attributes. And what we'll do in the next lecture is using our reference file here, we'll look at some of the line numbers and seeing where certain things are called, because they will actually explain how they work. And we'll do that in the next video.